In this video, I would like to work through the Proverbs, looking at a reading of them in Hebrew, followed by an inductive Hebrew grammatical analysis with commentary. And probably the best place to begin would be with vocabulary. So we have mashal, which means like ethical wisdom, a sentence teaching ethical wisdom, or a proverb. Mishle is the plural, meaning proverbs. Ethical aphorism or ethical sentence about wisdom. Then we have tuga, meaning grief. And then we have ya'al, to profit or to benefit one. Resha is wickedness. Ra'av, meaning to hunger. Hava is like ruin or destruction. Hadaf means to reject, to drive away, or to thrust out. Rosh means that poor, or that to be poor. Remiyah means to be idle. And haratz means to be diligent. And ashar means to be rich. Agar means like together. Kayetz is summer. And there is a verb meaning to fall down or to fall asleep, nirdam. And zeher, or katsir, I should say, means like harvest. But let me just start and go through now the Proverbs. Having looked at some of the vocabulary, let me begin by reading Mishlei Shalomo ben David, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, Melech Yisrael, king of Israel. Mishlei is where we get the word mashal. It's the plural, and it looks at like ethical teachings or ethical sayings. And these first verses down to verse, I'm sorry, uh, let me go back. I was at the wrong page here. Let me go back to 10. I was starting in 1, but I want to start in 10. I want to do the second part of the book. And that goes from 10:1 to 22 verse 16. So we begin Mishlei Shalomo, the Proverbs of Solomon. Mishlei is from Mashal. It is a plural noun in construct with Shalomo. So the ethical sayings or the Proverbs of Solomon, then it goes on, Ben Hacham Yesamach Av Uven Kasil Tugat Imo. A wise son maketh glad or rejoices a father, but a foolish son is the grief of his mother. Notice here a wise son, Ben Hacham, the noun Ben meaning son, Hacham, son, an adjective meaning a wise son. Yesamach rejoices a father. This samach is from samach, to rejoice. It is a PL imperfect, third masculine singular from samach. Notice you have in the imperfect here a shava pathak, followed then by the doubling of the middle radical uh, here in the mem. And shava pathak, doubling of the middle radical, is the pattern of a PL in perfect form. So a wise son makes glad a father, but a foolish son, uven kasil, a son who is foolish, uh, tugat imo, is the grief of his mother. Notice tugat is from tuga, it's in construct with imo, that is grief of his mother. And ima is the mother, but o is your pronominal suffix, third masculine singular. So what I think he's saying here is that a wise son who obeys his father and does what his father would like, who lives well, makes glad his father, who has instilled, if he's a godly father, a certain lifestyle. And a foolish son is the grief of his mother. The mother then would be grieved about the son not living the way she would have him to live. So it has to do with the parents. And the contrast here between one making the parent glad, the other bringing grief. Here we have an antithetical parallelism where you have but, and so a wise son makes glad uh, a father, but a foolish son is the grief of the mother. So here you have a statement and a but, antithetical. So this is one of the poetic styles that we had talked about in the introduction. So verse 2, he continues looking at again what the treasures of wickedness are and contrasting it with righteousness. Notice lo yu'ilu otsarot resha u tzedakah tatsil mimavet. That is, the treasures of wickedness profit, they do not profit, but righteousness will deliver from death. Uh, Notice here the verb lo yohilu from yahal, to cause to profit. It was historically, I believe, a pay vav verb, vahal, and it's the hiphil imperfect third common plural from uh, the root yahal, historically vahal, and yao would have been AW changed to a whole and vav, the long O vowel here. So yao ilu became yo ilu in this hiphil form, third uh, masculine plural. So treasures of wickedness, otsarot, here we have two nouns in construct, treasures that belong to wickedness, wicked activity, profit nothing. They lead to human failure. But righteousness, tzedakah tatsil mimavet, but leading a righteous life, righteousness, tatsil, delivers from death. Tatzil is from the root natsal. It's a pei noon root, and it would have been tan seal. Notice the pathak followed by the hirik yod, the AI vowel pattern indicative of a hifil imperfect. So righteousness uh, delivers from natsal. And that noon has gone into the tzadi by progressive assimilation, tansil becoming tatsil. So righteousness causes to deliver from death, mimavet. Now, the question we need to ask is, what is he speaking about here? It looks like he's probably looking at death, meaning that which leads to nowhere, leads to ruin. And so that basically the treasures of wickedness really don't profit in the long run. But righteousness delivers from that kind of ruin, one leading a righteous life. And so wealth obtained by wicked means uh, does not profit. Matter of fact, it leads to the opposite, but that is a ruin. But righteousness causes one to be delivered from death, or delivers from death. And again, this tatsio is the cow imperfect third feminine singular from natsal. So I think this could also be looking at the final day of judgment, uh, when all of this life of doing what is right will deliver from that death that will happen at the final judgment, a spiritual death uh, brought forth. So, at any rate, um, at this point, I think what he's talking about is it rescues one from even a ending of life in failure. And so the treasures of wickedness don't profit at all. But righteousness causes one to be delivered from death, that is, from the failure of a life that has no meaning whatsoever, and possibly even eternal judgment and the death that comes from that. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to try to keep these fairly short and look at what he's trying to teach. And I think the New Testament gives a similar emphasis throughout, that as you lead a righteous life, you will be rewarded in the future. For example, I think of Jesus, who said he's going to raise the dead someday, and they who have done good unto a resurrection of life, over against they who have not. By the way, and the Proverbs isn't writing from a Christian perspective as much as looking at practical wisdom. But as a Christian minister, I believe as I look at the New Testament, the good news is that doing righteous living in this life leads to life resurrection in the world to come. And it doesn't necessarily, doing good works don't save us in New Testament theology. It mainly shows the fruit of salvation. I've often said to students that if there's fire in the fireplace, which is the faith that causes salvation, then there needs to be smoke coming out of the chimney. There needs to be the work that follows that. Well, let me stop there. I'm going to slowly go through the Proverbs. It's not like working through a book of scripture. Each proverb has to stand on its own ground, or does stand on its own ground. And so again, I think he's looking at the contrast between the reward that comes when one is righteous, contrasted with the lack of reward for lawlessness and for the opposite lifestyle.